the defendant, Mr. Fresneda, to court to prove that you, not he, fathered Miss Jasmine Robinson.
A tense silence hangs over the courtroom as the judge introduces a 29-year-old woman, Jasmine Robinson, uncertain about a truth that could shake the foundation of her entire identity. Two men face her. One, Jorge Fresneda, who raised her as his own from birth. The other, Ladnar Thompson, who claims he secretly fathered her decades ago. Both men carry conviction, but only DNA can break through the cloud of denial and whispered secrets that have shadowed her life.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes, Your Honor.
Why did you finally decide to reach out to Robin?
Me and her mother had relations while Miss Fresneda was away.
Thompson begins with quiet determination, recounting an affair with Yasmin's mother, Sonia, while Jorge was away. He explains how the relationship ended once Jorge returned. Still, the timing of Sonia's pregnancy left questions. Family whispers suggested the child looked like him, yet Sonia insisted Jorge was the father. For years, Thompson stayed silent, unwilling to disrupt the family. Now, decades later, with Sonia gone, he insists the truth must finally come out.
What made you so certain as to why you would just reach out now after all of these years? She's 29 years old now.
Well, it's sorry to say, but I got a phone call saying that.
Jasmine listens, stunned. She admits she never heard rumors growing up, never suspected another man might be her father. Jorge never treated her differently from her siblings, and her mother never hinted at another possibility. For nearly 3 decades, she lived certain of her parentage, until Thompson began sending her Facebook messages.
This is a Facebook message?
Yeah, a Facebook message that he sent me saying like, "Hi, do you know who I am?" And I had said no. And then that's when he had started explaining the situation of how
Confusion quickly turned to disbelief. At first, Jasmine dismissed the messages as ridiculous, even insulting. But when she reached out to her Aunt Felicia, her mother's sister, everything changed. Felicia revealed the long-buried family gossip that Sonia had been involved with Thompson around the time Jasmine was conceived.
And so I had called my Aunt Felicia, and I said, "Auntie Felicia, this guy named Ladnar Thompson's messaging me on Facebook saying that he's my dad and not my dad." And then she was like, "What's his name?" And I had said Ladnar Thompson, and she's like, "Oh my God."
When Jasmine confronted Jorge, the man she had always known as her father, he too admitted hearing Thompson's claim in the past. Yet Jorge explained that Sonia was adamant in her denials, and that his love for her and Jasmine was too strong to let suspicion take root. He raised her as his own, never questioning the role, never letting rumors weaken the bond he chose to embrace. His conviction was clear. Whether or not blood tied them, she was his daughter in every way that mattered.
And my dad was like, "What's his name again?" And then I said Ladnar Thompson. And then he had said kind of the same story that my Aunt Felicia told me. He said that years ago, he had came around saying that he was my dad, but my mom was saying no.
Still, the emotional weight pressed heavily on Jasmine. She expressed feeling betrayed that no one in her family had ever told her about the possibility, even after her mother's death. She wondered why she had been left in the dark until an unexpected Facebook message shattered her certainty. Her pain was raw, revealing a lifelong trust in her identity suddenly fractured by competing stories, memories, and half-truths.
Yes, and I'm so sorry for that, but their relationship was happy, and at the time when she was conceived, I wasn't sure myself, so it took me a minute to get to where I'm at today.
The judge pressed deeper, calling Aunt Felicia to testify. Felicia confirmed that Sonia always denied Thompson's claim, but she too admitted noticing differences as the children grew older. She said Sonia often became defensive and angry when the subject arose, shutting down any suggestion that another man could be Jasmine's father. But privately, Felicia could not ignore the similarities between Thompson and Jasmine.
Who did your late sister name as the father?
Mr. Fernazzo.
So Mr. Fresneda, Mr. Fresneda
Yes.
was always the father that her late mother named. This is her dad.
Jorge, however, stood firm. He had loved Sonia, trusted her word, and built a family that included 4 more children after Jasmine. To him, paternity was never in question. Jasmine was his firstborn, and nothing could shake that truth in his heart. Still, he admitted wishing Thompson had spoken directly to him before contacting Jasmine, instead of letting her carry the burden of unraveling a decades-old secret alone.
Yes, we know each other.
You knew who he was?
Yes.
You were fully aware.
Of course.
Okay, and so what was the story as you understood it?
I asked her mother, and like he says, on more than one occasion, and she always said to me.
As the emotional testimonies settled, the weight of decades of denial and secrecy filled the room. The judge acknowledged the complexity, the love of a man who raised her, the conviction of another who claimed her, and a daughter caught in the middle with no way to resolve the conflict but science. At last, the DNA results arrived. All eyes locked on the bench as the judge slowly began to read.
It has been determined by this court. The biological father is Mr. Thompson. You are her father. Ms. Hayslip, you are seeking a DNA test to prove that Mr. Hayslip, the defendant, is your biological father. You've believed he is your biological father for many years.
The courtroom was heavy with tension the moment Celeste Hayslip took her place before Judge Lake. For 19 years, she had carried the belief that David Hayslip was her father, even as he denied her at every turn. She had grown up with his name, his legacy, but never his presence. Now, she sought clarity, demanding a DNA test to finally settle the question of her identity. Across the room, David stood rigid, fueled by years of bitterness, insisting she was never his child.
When did you first hear that Ms. Hayslip is potentially your daughter?
Moved from southern Michigan to northern Michigan. I was on my way back, about a 200-mile trip to...
David's anger was rooted in the way the truth had reached him, not through family, not through choice, but through handcuffs. He recounted the humiliation of being pulled over for speeding and suddenly being told he was wanted for unpaid child support. Shackled and locked away, he learned for the first time that someone was claiming he had a daughter.
When you finally got out, how did you go about finding out what this information was and how?
When I was released from the county, they gave me a court date. They stated the mother's name and the child's name, and I'm like, look, it's
In court, David pointed to the conception dates, laying them out with precision. He admitted to a brief affair with Celeste's mother, but said it ended months before the child could have been conceived. His calendar showed encounters in October and November, which placed a possible due date in August, but Celeste wasn't born until late September. To him, the math didn't add up.
You have a completely different understanding that you were told as a child.
As I was growing up, I knew David as my father.
Who told you that he
My
was?
mother.
Okay.
Celeste's truth was very different. She described her childhood with conviction, explaining that her mother always told her David was her father. From her earliest years, she had carried that knowledge, only for it to shift as she grew older. At just 5 years old, her mother hinted that David might not be her father, but the name Hayslip remained etched into her life.
For a long time, they rode the same school bus and didn't even know it.
Can I jump in with that?
Mr. Hayslip, how did this happen?
She had a different last name. She did not carry my last name up until, as far as I know, her freshman year of high school.
And that was her mother's choice.
The connection came unexpectedly. As a child, Celeste rode the same school bus as one of David's daughters, Courtney, without realizing they might be sisters. Even David's sister, Susan, who supported Celeste, admitted she felt an immediate resemblance when they first met. She described the struggle of trying to bond with her niece, only to be blocked by Celeste's mother, and later devastated when Celeste was placed into foster care.
Okay.
I kept asking her and asking her and asking her to let me know Celeste, get to know her. She denied me. She wouldn't let me get to know her.
Really?
Yes. And then finally, after several months, she finally set it up to where that I could meet Celeste.
David, however, resisted those claims with fury. He recalled a family gathering where Susan brought Celeste unannounced, declaring her to be his daughter before the entire family. To him, it was a humiliation, a forced announcement without proof. He insisted that if Celeste were truly his, it should have been his decision to accept her into the family.
Say to your brother, hey, David, this young girl, I think she reminds me of myself.
What really happened is she brought Celeste to a family gathering this was before, I'd never seen her.
As the years passed, the wounds only deepened. Celeste, in tears, recalled how she spent 5.5 years in foster care, knowing that David had refused to take her in. To her, it was abandonment, proof that the man she believed was her father had turned his back on her. David countered sharply, calling it a lie, claiming he had checked on her well-being and even driven miles to try to find her.
What was your childhood like trying to manage this kind of information?
I've grown up as him as my father, her as my aunt, her as my sister. But also,
the confrontation grew heavier as Celeste's half-sister Courtney took the stand. She admitted to doubts, uncertain whether Celeste could be her sibling, confused by the secrecy and silence. David seized on that uncertainty, pointing to Celeste's troubled past, her arrests, and insisting he didn't want her influence around his other children. But Judge Lake's tone sharpened, reminding him of the cruel childhood Celeste had endured, reminding him that much of her struggle stemmed from the rejection she faced. The court fell quiet as the weight of her words landed, forcing David to confront the humanity of the daughter he denied.
Is there a reason why you have not accepted Miss Hayslip Celeste into your life? Are you doubtful that she is your sister?
A little bit, because I've never been told about her.
Judge Lake, unshaken, prepared to deliver the truth. She acknowledged the pain, the accusations, and the years of fractured relationships. But in her hands was the envelope that held the answer. A single test that would silence the arguments and settle the question once and for all. She opened it slowly, and all eyes turned to her as she read the results.
When it comes to Celeste Hayslip, you are her father. Brought your mother to court because you claim she committed paternity fraud and lied to you about the identity of your biological father. You were raised believing one man was your father, but are here to prove another is your dad.
The courtroom feels heavy as Jessica Seaton takes her place before the judge. She has carried a secret for years, one that has torn apart her relationship with her mother and clouded her sense of identity. Jessica explains that she was raised believing Jesse Seaton, her mother's husband, was her biological father. His name is on her birth certificate, he kept her umbilical cord, and he loved her unconditionally until his death when she was a child. But now, after decades of doubt and whispers, she is convinced another man, Gregory Bryson, may be her true father.
I just want to start by saying I haven't seen her talk to this woman in 5 years, almost 5 years. The reason that I haven't seen her talk to her in almost 5 years is because she's a liar.
Her mother, Teresa McPeak, stands across the courtroom unflinching. She denies ever lying about Jessica's paternity and insists Jesse was the rightful father all along. She argues that if Jesse had doubts, he could have pursued DNA testing decades earlier, but he never did. In her eyes, Jessica's accusations are nothing more than cold-hearted attacks meant to inflict pain.
My daughter doesn't care who she hurts at all. She's a very cold-hearted person, and she just does not care who she hurts.
Have you lied to her about her father?
No. They could have had DNA.
The judge presses deeper, demanding answers about how this question of paternity surfaced after so many years. Jessica recounts a medical crisis in 2011 when she needed a blood transfusion. To her, that incident confirmed that Jesse, the man she thought was her father, might not have been biologically connected to her at all. Teresa immediately denies this account, dismissing it as a fabrication designed to tarnish her reputation.
Back in 2011, I had complications and I needed a blood transfusion. My mom was supposed to make it to the hospital. She never showed up, whatever the reason was. So my grandmother and my Uncle Paul had both.
The court then hears a written statement from Jessica's grandmother, Jesse's mother. In it, she claims she always knew Jesse was not Jessica's father. She accuses Teresa of being with Greg during the pregnancy and says everyone in their small town knew the truth. Teresa dismisses the letter, insisting Jesse's mother never approved of her and never considered her good enough for her son. Her rebuttal is fierce.
Everyone in town knows that Teresa was with Greg while she was pregnant. I don't know why Teresa keeps denying it. I couldn't go years without telling Jessica who her real father was, which is Greg.
Jessica pushes back with more allegations. She says her mother once told her, and even told her grandmother, that DNA testing had been done years ago. Yet when Jessica contacted DNA centers, no such record existed. Teresa flatly denies ever saying such a thing, accusing her daughter of inventing stories. She maintains that if she were unwilling to face the truth, she would not have appeared in court at all.
Well, Jesse died when I was about 7.5, but from what I can remember, he was the perfect man, perfect dad. What hurts me the most is that this man died thinking that I was his only daughter.
When asked about the timeline of her relationships, Teresa admits she lived with Greg during the period of conception, but later became involved with Jesse. The overlap was close, raising the likelihood that either man could be Jessica's father. This admission tilts the courtroom atmosphere. Suddenly, the possibility of Greg's paternity feels undeniable.
Did you tell Mr. Bryson and your daughter about a DNA test, Ms. McPeak?
No. Everything she just said is a lie. Not one time ever did I tell her that we had DNA. That's a lie.
The judge then calls Greg Bryson into the room. He enters confidently, his voice steady as he declares he is certain Jessica is his daughter. He points to their physical resemblance and recalls how Jesse's mother once told him Jessica was his child. To him, there has never been a doubt. Greg then paints a picture of betrayal. He recalls coming home one day to find his belongings tossed into the snow, replaced by Jesse, who had suddenly taken his place in Teresa's life.
Miss Seaton's Jessica's biological father.
Yes, I can guarantee you, Your Honor.
You do?
Oh, yes.
Why do you believe that?
Look at her. She looks like my other daughter. I guarantee you, the money I got in my pocket, she's mine. Secondly, the grandmother.
The courtroom listens as he explains why he never fought harder back then. With Jesse listed on the birth certificate, Greg says he felt powerless. In his words, a man cannot force fatherhood if a woman refuses to acknowledge him. He claims the only reason he knew for sure was because Jesse's mother confirmed it and because he could see himself in Jessica's face.
She deprived me of 32 years of being with my daughter.
And I see how emotional you are about that. I see how much that upsets you. So if you knew that, then why didn't you pursue any avenues?
As a man, what can you do?
The room quiets as the judge signals for the envelope. Jerome delivers it to the bench, the sound of paper crisp against the tension that fills the air. The judge explains that 2 DNA tests were performed, one with Jesse's biological relative and one with Greg himself. Jessica leans forward, her eyes fixed on the envelope that contains the truth she has waited her entire life to know. Then the judge began reading the results.
It has been determined by this court. The biological father is Mr. Bryson. Ms. Owens, you say that after a whirlwind teenage romance and a brief marriage to Mr. Raines, he got you pregnant and then left you high and dry to raise your daughter, Jamie, on your own.
The courtroom is tense as Clara Owens steps forward, carrying decades of pain like armor. She insists that her former teenage sweetheart and ex-husband, David Raines, is the father of her daughter Jaime. To Clara, the story is simple. After a stormy young marriage and a pregnancy she carried mostly alone, David abandoned her. She has come to court determined to prove he is the man responsible, not only for the child she raised, but for the years of silence that followed.
2 to 3 weeks pregnant when I went back and to live with my parents when he left me. This is after him and 2 of his friends had come home about 1 o'clock in the morning with 3 girls.
David, however, pushes back with equal conviction. To him, the timeline of conception does not fit. He argues he was living in another county separated from Clara, long before Jaime was conceived. He paints Clara as a woman using his name to save face, suggesting she labeled him the father because admitting the truth would be too humiliating for her and too painful for their daughter.
So did you have any happy times?
We had a few, not many.
Okay.
About the only time we really did have any connection was in bed.
All right, I'm getting all the facts.
Clara recounts how she was just weeks pregnant when David left her, after nights of suspected infidelity. She remembers clearly 2 in the morning, other women in their home, and a husband who brushed it off. For her, that betrayal marked the end. David doesn't deny his behavior. Instead, he dismisses it as youthful recklessness, saying their relationship had always been unstable.
If you believe she was cheating, Mr. Raines.
We went home awful lot. It's just hard to believe for me to believe that she was not cheating. I mean, again, here we are in court today over a child that's 27 years old, and the timeline don't add up.
At the center of this conflict is Jaime, a woman now in her mid-20s, caught between her mother's certainty and her supposed father's doubts. David leans heavily on a calendar, counting backward from Jaime's July 31st birthday to argue that conception must have happened after he left Clara in August. He presents it methodically, step by step, as if mathematics could erase decades of lingering doubt.
All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This is when Clara says she's pregnant.
No, I got pregnant in October.
This is when she's the 6th day, so I left in August is when I left.
The judge listens carefully, pushing both to confront inconsistencies. For the first time, the courtroom hears the unvarnished truth. There's another man, and the window of conception overlaps with both men. The weight of that admission is crushing. Clara, through tears, confesses she always wished her daughter had the kind of father she herself grew up with. But instead, Jaime was left with questions.
Got a letter from him, Your Honor, when I was 7 months pregnant, out to here, and he said, "You are not pregnant, it's all in your head."
The birth certificate becomes another battleground. Clara never listed David as the father, giving Jaime her maiden name instead. For her, that decision was one of pain and pride. If he wanted no part in their child, then she would not force it. David, however, argues differently, saying Clara told people they had been separated too long for the baby to be his. He accuses her of planting doubt and hiding the truth.
I actually took her to see him when she was 2 weeks old.
And when you saw her, what did you...
There was still doubt. You know, there's still doubt. There's always been doubt.
Despite his denial, David admits he paid child support and made attempts to be present. His story is messy. He claims he never believed Jaime was his, yet acknowledges he still stepped in financially. For him, the blame lies with Clara, who he says poisoned any chance of a relationship by constantly fueling conflict. The contradiction is striking. Here is a man who denied paternity, but also shouldered parts of fatherhood.
My name's not.
And this is the birth certificate for Jamie Corinda Owens, and the baby was born to Clara Dean Owens.
No father's name on it.
And there is no father listed on this birth certificate.
Exactly.
Jaime herself speaks with raw emotion. She recalls learning at 12 that her mother had been with another man. At the time, she brushed it off, assuming her mother was only trying to stop her from moving in with David. She compared her features to photographs of the other man, convinced at times she resembled him more than her supposed siblings. For her, the doubt has been lifelong and unresolved.
That I'm not her dad.
Who did you think was your father growing up?
I've had several people tell me all through my life that I didn't look like him, that he wasn't, that the timeline was off, that...
The judge's questions pierce deeper, challenging Clara about her motives. Was it hate, jealousy, or genuine uncertainty that led her to withhold the truth from Jaime? Clara admits it was both. She confesses she used her daughter as a weapon at times, a pawn in her battle with David. The judge acknowledges the years of confusion, pointing out how the lack of facts left space for painful stories to grow. But now, she insists, the time for doubt is over.
It has been determined by this court. Mr. Raines, you are the father. Miss Casey, you say that for more than 25 years, your mother has told you that a deceased man who is listed on your birth certificate...
From the moment the case was announced, the courtroom carried an air of unease. A daughter had grown up with questions gnawing at her identity, told for more than 2 decades that the man listed on her birth certificate was her father, yet never knowing him, never even holding a picture of his face. Her mother insisted that this man, long believed dead after a violent end, was the true father. But another man, still very much alive, stepped forward to challenge that story. For the first time, all of them stood before the judge, forced to face the past that had been buried under lies, rumors, and silence.
Not knowing where I came from, I built a bond with Otis Hawkins, who's on my birth certificate, even though he's not ever been in my life. I do not know what the man looks like. I don't have a picture of him. I don't have anything about him, but...
The daughter, Laconda, did not hide her pain. She spoke of her childhood marked by the absence of a father. Unlike her siblings, who grew up with fathers present, she was left wandering through doubt and resentment. She had given her children the stability she never knew, making sure they always knew who their father was. But behind her determination was a deep wound.
How do you feel?
It hurts me to find out that's how she feels. If I would have knew that that's what she needed, I would have did my best to help her, but I did not know.
Miss Casey, you seem to kind of...
Her mother, Ms. Ewing, sat under the scrutiny of both her daughter and the court. She admitted she once believed the father was a man named Otis Hawkins, only to hear later that he had been killed in a violent family altercation. She said she kept this from her daughter until years later, not knowing how to tell a child that her father was gone, but the daughter looked unconvinced.
I called his cousin to see did she want to spend time with Laconda, and she informed me then that he had been shot in the head by his brother and he was deceased. Laconda was 7 years old.
Then came the other man, Mr. Edwards. He insisted that during the time of conception, he and Ms. Ewing were still intimately involved. For him, this wasn't speculation. He reached out years later, searching on social media. When he saw Laconda, he said he felt it instantly. She looked like his family, carried the features of his daughters, and even mirrored his own mother's face. The conviction in his voice was heavy.
You weren't in your daughter's life or Miss Casey's life, am I correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
So you reached out to her on social media?
I was looking.
You were looking?
I was looking for them.
But Laconda wasn't quick to accept. She admitted that when she met Edwards, the bond she expected wasn't there. It felt blank, hollow. She compared herself to his daughter, who insisted they looked alike, but in her heart, she couldn't feel that father-daughter connection. She even raised a striking detail. Both Edwards and Hawkins were African American, yet her complexion and features didn't quite match either side.
I did not have a bond with him. Me and my older sister had a conversation about my mother, and she was like, well, what if he is your father, since mother lied to us for so many years about different things? What if Mr. Edwards become your father?
Then, the twist. The judge revealed that the man LaConda had believed dead, Otis Hawkins, was alive. The courtroom gasped as he was escorted in. For the first time in her life, she came face to face with the man who had lived in the margins of her story. Hawkins walked in carrying photographs, proof of a life lived with her image framed by his bed for nearly 3 decades.
Miss Casey.
Yes, ma'am.
You've been told for over 25 years that Otis Hawkins, the man you believe to be your father.
The reunion brought joy and heartbreak in equal measure. Hawkins swore he never stopped thinking about her, that her picture stayed with him every night, but his presence now stirred more questions than answers. How had the story of his death spread? Why had her mother told her that he was gone forever? Ms. Ewing denied making it up, claiming it was what she had been told.
LaConda's picture.
All these years I looked
You
at it
remember the relationship with her mother.
Yes.
Tell me about that relation.
Hawkins reaffirmed he believed he was her father without doubt. He declared that he had never doubted she was his child. Edwards clung to his conviction, pointing to similarities that no test could erase from his mind. The mother's credibility crumbled under the weight of conflicting accounts, her past choices exposed.
Did you ever doubt LaConda was yours?
They just asked me last weekend when I buried my mother, and on her obituary.
The daughter, having carried the blame for so long, finally heard the judge cut through the noise. She had been an innocent child, never responsible for the chaos adults had created around her. But that truth was little comfort as she faced 3 possibilities. At last, the judge held the envelope in her hands. Years of mystery, a lifetime of searching, and countless lies hung in the balance.
Pertaining to whether Mr. Hawkins is the father of Ms. Casey. Mr. Hawkins, you are not her father.